Today I'm shedding a light on all of the fraudsters. These are characters or concepts who talked a big game but delivered absolutely nothing when it mattered the most. I've been a Bleach fan since 2006 and let me tell you, Kubo has a special talent for building up characters or ideas so perfectly that it should come as no surprise that there are moments where he fails to deliver upon the hype. If you follow my channel, then you'll know that I love Bleach. The world building is incredible, Kubo gets so much right, but even I have to admit that Kubo sometimes loves to set up these elaborate dominoes that just lead to nowhere after they've fallen. So what exactly makes something a fraud within Bleach? Well, it's that moment when you realize the gap between what you were promised and what you actually got. So in this video, I'm listing the 10 biggest frauds within Bleach. Be sure to stick around until the very end of the video because I'm sure that the top 3 are going to surprise you. Kicking things off in the number 10 spot is Head Captain Yamamoto's right-hand man who had spent time with him for over 1,000 years. This is Chojiro Sasakibe. Sasakibe is pretty ancient even in comparison to some of the current captains, and Kubo expected us to believe that he was really standing there quietly alongside Yamamoto for all of those years. Sasakibe should have been one of the Soul Society's most interesting characters, as this is someone who has witnessed every major event in the history of the Shinigami. He had earned the trust of Yamamoto and his Bankai was so strong that it scarred the head captain's face. This was some amazing setup for somebody who should have been a wise mentor figure or at least a secret powerhouse. Instead, we ended up getting a character who said maybe 12 words in 20 years of publication, and he got one-shotted by Ichigo with a casual punch during the Soul Society arc. Ichigo didn't even need to use a special technique, he just used a regular punch. And at this point, Ichigo had only been a Shinigami for like 5 minutes. The worst part is when Kubo finally decided to kill off Sasakibe in the 1000-Year Blood War arc, it was supposed to be this emotional moment which would fuel Yamamoto's rage. Except it was really hard to sell this for audiences because Sasakibe had the personality of background furniture as far as they were concerned. While this was the case within the manga, thankfully the anime did have some anime additional scenes where we saw the past of young Sasakibe with Yamamoto. But even with these additions, it felt a little too late, and his Bankai reveal was also a letdown. He had amazing lightning powers that allegedly rivaled captain level strength, but when we finally see them in action, they get immediately stolen by the Quincy and then used against him. Over 1,000 years of loyalty and service, and Sasakibe couldn't even get a proper final battle. So yeah, Sasakibe has well and truly earned his enrollment into Fraud Academy. Now in the number 9 spot, we have the flamboyant TV personality who has his very own spiritual investigation show. I'm of course talking about Don Kanonji. On his TV show, he leads you to believe that he is powerful enough to affect ghosts as he has spiritual power, and maybe fans of the series would have thought that Don Kanonji would have had more of a prominent role in the story, but it turns out that this guy's been making everything worse by turning peaceful spirits into hollows with his botched exorcisms. His spiritual expertise amounts to poking ghosts with a stick and hoping for the best. Now what's really cheesy about Don Kanonji is that he eventually went on to recruit children who actually have spiritual power to form his superhero team, and then he takes all of the credit for their hard work. Then during the Fate Karakura Town arc, Don Kanonji does have his very own confrontation with Aizen, and this was the final nail in the coffin. He ended up firing this little energy ball at literally the most dangerous individual in the Bleach universe, and Aizen just stood there like, who on earth is this clown? Don Kanonji's attack was so pathetic that Aizen didn't even bother countering it properly, and just like Mr. Satan from Dragon Ball, Don Kanonji has well and truly earned the title of fraud. In the number 8 spot, we have somebody who really had everything going for them. This of course is Tia Haribel, the 3rd ranking Espada. She was the only female within the top ranks of Aizen's army, and she got this amazing great design with the shark theme, and her backstory about protecting her subordinates was actually fascinating. And then suddenly out of nowhere, Aizen just cuts her down mid-fight because he ends up being bored. This is the only major female Arrancar. She's clearly struggling but putting up a decent fight against multiple opponents, and Aizen just decides to throw her away for shock value. It does feel like Kubo suddenly remembered that he needed to move the plot along, and he just axed her without any thought. What really stings is that Haribel wasn't even weak. She was holding her own against Hitsugaya, who at this point was still a prodigy captain. Her water powers were creative, her resurrection was imposing, and she had actual tactical intelligence. But none of this mattered because Aizen decided her performance wasn't entertaining enough. There was a bit of course correction on Kubo's part as he showed that she had survived and then became the Avenger eventual ruler of Hueco Mundo, but the damage was already done. And then the fact that she is imprisoned by the Quincy and we never see her again during the 1000-Year Blood War arc is yet another nail in the coffin which cements Harrybell's place in this list of fraudsters. I really do hope that Core 4 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime does redeem Harrybell's character, because I do think that there is an opportunity for the Queen of Hueco Mundo to have her revenge against the Quincy after what they had done to her. In the number 7 spot, we have none other than Execution. It's hard to even start with these guys. On paper, this should have been fascinating. They are a secret organization of Fullbringers with mysterious motivations led by the very first substitute Shinigami who might have legitimate grievances against the Soul Society. This is a setup for a morally complicated story arc that could have explored the darker side of the Shinigami and the Soul Society. But instead, we got the members of Execution showcasing their not so impressive abilities, with Yukio's PlayStation Portable allowing him to make pocket dimensions, with Jackie's magic boots, and Riruka's dollhouse. Now these aren't the most threatening of supernatural powers. And then when it comes to the character of Ginjo, a lot of people have issues stating that they barely knew him as a character before he turned evil. And a lot of fans do feel that this plot twist was very predictable. While I'm a huge fan of the Fullbring arc, it's undeniable that some aspects of it felt rushed. Like the villains of the arc Execution. Their goal pretty much was to steal Ichigo's Fullbring in order to make themselves stronger. This was a pretty disappointingly straightforward motivation for a group that was supposed to have complicated motives. And then the real kicker was when the Gotei 13 showed up and they absolutely demolished Execution without breaking a sweat. This is what made some fans feel like the entire arc was pointless. These guys were only threatening because Ichigo was temporarily weakened, and the moment that he got his powers back with backup from the Gotei 13, they ended up becoming irrelevant. At least one great memorable contribution from Execution is the My Friend Tsukishima meme. I honestly cannot get enough of seeing these. I do hope that Ginjo, Giriko, and Tsukishima do have a bit more of a role within Core 4 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc. We did see them training with Ganju, so there is a lot of hope, and we know that these three characters do have a bit of a significant role to play during the Can't Fear Onward light novels, where we learn about the past of Ginjo. I would love a Can't Fear Onward anime adaptation and for the Fullbringers to have more of a role to play in Core 4. I think that would solve a lot of the issues that I have with Execution. In the number 6 spot, we have the fraudulent mentor Kensei Muguruma. This guy is a captain who 100 years ago got holified. He spent a century in exile, and he presumably must have been training and growing stronger, but he ended up returning to the story with just a bit more of a stronger punch. And then we learn that Kensei's Bankai is pretty much knuckle dusters. I do understand that not every Bankai needs to be reality warping. This is a holified captain who should possess unique hybrid Shinigami and hollow powers, and he's had decades to further develop his abilities. It's a bit of a shame that the best that Kubo could come up with was what if I punch things but with metal gloves. During his fight against Mask D Masculine, this is where the fraud allegations had stemmed from and had become undeniable. Kensei should pretty much know how Mask's power works, but yet he manages to lose because he gets distracted by crowd noise. It's like watching a professional boxer lose to an amateur because someone in the audience sneezed too loudly. Kensei was supposed to be Hisagi's mentor, and these two have this established relationship. Hisagi clearly looks up to him, and there is a brief scene between the first and second Quincy invasion where we see Kensei training Hisagi, but the manga does not deliver on this with a payoff during the 1000-Year Blood War arc. Instead, Hisagi's Bankai is revealed during the Can't Fear Onward light novels. Now, Shinji's Bankai was also exclusive to the light novels, but we did end up getting an anime exclusive scene in Core 2, so there is still time in Core 4 for Kensei to be redeemed as a mentor figure if Hisagi showcases his Bankai against the Quincy. With Kensei's character, there is very little development. He represents everything that is frustrating about the Vizards as a group, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that there are aspects of the Vizards that definitely have wasted potential. So coming in the number 5 spot, we have the alleged strongest Espada. This is Yami Lago. Now, the reveal that Yami was actually Espada number 0 should have been mind-blowing. This recontextualizes everything that we thought that we had known about the hierarchy of the Arrancar, but instead it became one of the most laughable fake-outs within all of manga. Here's the thing that still bothers me years later. Ukiura in Segunda Etapa was clearly stronger than anything that Yami had ever shown us. Ukiura had that overwhelming presence, the genuine threat level, and philosophical depth that made him feel like a final boss. Yami's strategy, on the other hand, was let's get big and angry. This isn't even a strategy strategy, this is pretty much what toddlers do when they don't get their way. The off-screen defeat was the ultimate insult that Yami had gotten after all of that build-up about how he's the true strongest Espada and everyone else is trash. We don't even get to see him fight properly. Kinpachi and Byakuya apparently had such an easy time with him that Kinpachi called the fight boring. So while it may be true that Yami in terms of raw power is the strongest, when it comes to the execution of that power, it is laughable. Because of his insane size, he is slower and clumsier. The Bleach databook Unmasked does reveal that the fight against Yami destroyed half of Las Noches, but we ended up seeing none of that because it was off-screened. So yeah, his rank of 0 felt less like a meaningful reveal and more like Kubo trolling the fanbase. In the number 4 spot, we have the not so legendary Sokyoku. This is the execution device that supposedly had the power of 1,000,000 Zanpakuto, but it got absolutely humiliated by a teenage substitute Shinigami. Try to quantify just how powerful 1,000,000 Zanpakuto are. People were so unimpressed with the Sokyoku that they started to claim that instead it had the power of 1,000,000 sealed ordinary Zanpakuto. But even then, if you're talking about the weakest, most pathetic unsealed Zanpakuto in existence, even 1,000,000 of them should be able to level the Soul Society. But moments before Rukia's execution, Ichigo appears and blocks it with his Zanpakuto like he's stopping a particularly aggressive pigeon. Fan theories try to explain this away by saying that it was only using enough power to execute Rukia, but that just raises more questions. If this thing can modulate its power, why was everyone acting like Ichigo blocking it was impossible? Then Ukitake and Shunsui appear with what appears to be a spirit shield as they completely destroy the Sokyoku. The ultimate execution device was destroyed by a fancy barrier. The Sokyoku went from being this terrifying symbol of the Soul Society's authority to a joke in the span of a few chapters. Kubo does love throwing around impressive sounding statistics without thinking about the implications. 1,000,000 of anything should be devastating, but in the end, the Sokyoku proved to perform worse than most regular Zanpakuto that we've seen. We're now in the top 3 biggest frauds in Bleach, and the third spot goes to the Vizards, who should have been Bleach's secret weapon against basically everything. The Vizards are a group of former captains and lieutenants who possess hollow powers, with their personal grudges against Aizen, along with possessing unique abilities which allowed them to counter both Arrancar and Quincy. All of this hype had positioned them to be major players within every single conflict in the series, but somehow Kubo managed to sideline the entire group of the Vizards. Most of them got maybe one decent fight before becoming background characters or zombie fodder. Shinji got a very brief encounter with Aizen, which doesn't justify his feelings of revenge that he has against him. Rose and Kensei during the 1,000-year Blood War arc revealed their Bankai only to then immediately lose, and Love and Lisa are usually swatted aside like they are minor inconveniences. The Vizards' hollow powers should have been the perfect counter to the abilities of the Quincy, but during the manga version of the 1,000-year Blood War arc, this group was severely underutilized. But thankfully, the end of the Core 3 anime, we did get an anime exclusive scene where the Vizards holified against Gerard Valkyrie. So this does promise us that we are going to be getting more anime exclusive scenes involving the Vizards in Core 4, which hopefully should rectify some of these issues. Out of all of the Vizards as it stands, Hachi was the only one who got a satisfying victory against Baragon during the Fate Karakura Town arc. The rest of the Vizards seem to exist purely to make the villains look stronger by comparison. The worst part with the Vizards is that their individual personalities and fighting styles had so much potential, and this is what I'm really hoping that Pierrot Films will capitalize upon with some new scenes involving the Vizards in Core 4. Okay, in the number 2 spot for the biggest fraud in Bleach, we have Chad. Now his story is genuinely heartbreaking when you think about it. This is a guy who was set up as Ichigo's most loyal best friend. We had seen him as the physical powerhouse of Ichigo's group and one of the first humans to develop supernatural abilities in the series. His early scenes made him feel like he'd be a core fighter throughout Bleach. The "I can't even imagine Chad losing" line from the Soul Society arc wasn't meant to be ironic, but it ended up becoming one of the most unintentional memes in all of the manga. Because after that moment, Chad's track record became a masterclass in failure. During the Soul Society arc, he lost to Shunsui. Following this, he begged Urahara to train him, as Urahara got him to train against Renji in his Bankai form, but even this wasn't enough. After he defeated Gatenbine, he was overwhelmed by the first Espada that he faced, Noitara. Then by the time that we reach the Fullbring arc, Chad's role within the story becomes so insignificant that he's been sidelined entirely. What makes this so frustrating is that Chad had genuine potential that was just never never developed. His Fullbring abilities were unique, drawing power from his desire to protect others and his memories of his grandfather. He does have a lot of compelling character motivation that could have led to his Fullbringer powers evolving over time, but his powers never really progressed beyond the point of punching harder. By the end of the series, Chad had a very minimal role that he played during the 1000-year Blood War arc, and he became more of a meme character. Every time that he would turn up to a fight, people would meme about how they cannot imagine Chad losing, only for him to then go on and lose. There is again an opportunity for Core 4 of the 1000-year Blood War arc to rectify some of these issues by giving Chad a bit more screen time, so that people can regain their confidence in Chad and say with confidence that they cannot imagine him losing without it being a joke. Now we've reached the #1 spot for the biggest frauds in all of Bleach, and the crown jewel goes to none other than the Zero Squad, or some have referred to them as Squad 0 out of 5. This group is made up of 5 of the most legendary Shinigami in history who had everything going for them, but yet they still ended up becoming one of the biggest disappointments. Shunsui straight up had told us that Squad 0 had more military power than the entire Gotei 13 combined, more than Yamamoto, Kinpachi, Byakuya, and everyone else put together. Each member of Squad 0 is credited for having created something fundamental to the Soul Society. Nimaiya made every Zanpakuto, Ichibei named everything in existence, Kirinji developed the advanced healing hot springs, Kiriya Hikifune had invented the artificial souls, and Senjumaru had crafted the Shinigami Shihakusho. Now this group should have been the ultimate trump card against Yhwach and the Shoot Starfall. Instead, 4 out of 5 got defeated off screen in the manga with minimal impact, but thankfully the anime did rectify this by showing us the battles that had taken place via some anime exclusive scenes that we had seen during the end of Core 2. Nimaiya is the perfect example of the disappointment that has been associated with Squad 0. This is somebody who created the very concept of the Zanpakuto and had forged every single one in existence. He had earned the title of God of the Sword, but for some strange reason we didn't even see him release his Zanpakuto to showcase his Shikai. What's crazy is that the Shoot Starfall members who ended up defeating the Royal Guard later lost to regular Gotei 13 captains. This is hard to really wrap your head around. If the Royal Guard is stronger than the entire Gotei 13 combined, then how can individual captains defeat enemies that overwhelmed them? The fan reactions against the disappointment of Squad 0 has been pretty brutal, as people referred to them as Squad 0 feats and Zero fraud. Some of this backlash has been remedied again, like I said, by the anime exclusive scenes that we saw in Core 2, where we saw Senjumaru's Bankai in action, and we got the explanation that the Bankai of the Zero Division members are sealed because if they were to release them, then it would cause destabilization across all of the realms. While I have an incredible amount of love and respect for Bleach and its author Kubo, like with any piece of fictional media, it does have its flaws. Bleach is prone to having incredible setups with minimal to no payoff, and this is in part due to it having such a large cast of characters that it's hard for Kubo to shine a spotlight onto each and every one of them. But yeah, we have reached the point of the video where I do want to hand over the discussion to all of you. This was my list of the 10 biggest frauds in Bleach, but I'd love to know all of your own lists for the 10 biggest frauds or disappointments that did not live up to their expectations in Bleach. If there's anything that I've forgotten to mention, or if you disagree with some of my takes, then let me know by continuing the discussion in the comments. And lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you in my next video.
A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.